Well, we're back, and we have been making some pretty good headway through the story of David. That video, I think we've covered every single story from that video. Everyone stare at Deb, she's getting a phone call. Okay. We've covered most of those stories that you know. Everyone knows David the shepherd. Everyone knows David and Goliath. Most of us know David cutting the thing off of Saul's coat. And then we just kind of assume that David went on and lived whatever life he lived and disappeared. And we learned last week that David, although with all these triumphs that he had, all these lovely things that he did as he retook Jerusalem, as he got the Ark of the Covenant back, then he started to trip and he started to fall. And when it was time for the kings to go to war, he stayed home and found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. So he could see this woman bathing on the roof and sends for her, sleeps with her, gets her pregnant, finds out she's married, so that's not good. So we're going to have to take care of her husband, and so he sets up her husband to be killed, uses one of his generals, and they kind of do some sneaky, shady stuff, right? And he gets this man to be killed so that he can marry this woman, Bathsheba, and give birth to a son. And then the prophet of the Lord named Nathan shows up, and he says, David, 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 you went and you did something you really shouldn't have done. And Nathan gives David 3 separate things that he tells him. 1, the sword will never leave your house, right? You're always going to have problems in your house. 2, your son is going to die. Period. End of story. This son that you've just had, not going to make it. 3, you will be embarrassed publicly. It will happen in front of everyone. You wanted to sneak around with Bathsheba and do it over here on the side. I'm going to embarrass you in front of everyone so that you'll learn your lesson. And we learned that David kind of went into what most of us would call a depression. For a week, he sat on the ground and he wouldn't eat, and he had bad clothes on, and they couldn't get him to eat or drink or do anything, hoping that God would save his son. His son died. David got up and went about his business, ended up having another son with Bathsheba, his name being Solomon. And of course, everyone knows who Solomon is. But that was not David's first child. David's first child has a much more interesting name. His name is Absolom. Absolom. Okay, so think about that name for a minute, because we're going to hear it quite a bit. And today we're going to learn the second half of something I taught you already. So if you remember, a few weeks back, we talked about the transition of leadership. And we were talking about Saul, and Saul didn't want to let David become king. Right? That's the last thing he wanted, was to allow David to become king. And David, despite knowing that he's the next king, did not attack Saul, did not openly say stuff about Saul. In fact, when given the opportunity to kill Saul, he didn't, right? That's that story about him cutting off the part of his cloak. That David was passive in the transition of leadership. Saul was the older generation trying to keep the younger generation from taking over. And we talked about how the older generation, we kind of bear responsibility to the younger people who are coming up to teach them in the ways that they should go, teach them about Christ. And we talked about teaching them about church, and that maybe to a younger person, a church shouldn't have stained glass windows, but to an older person, they think a church has to have stained glass windows. Or how can we sit in chairs and not pews? Pews are what Jesus sat in, you know, and they have these arguments, right? That whatever it is that I did when I was a kid and when I was growing up, that's the right way. And whatever you're trying to do that's in any way different, that's the wrong way. And that is just not good, not correct. So we talked about the relationship that the older generation has to the younger generation. Now we're going to talk about what does the younger generation, what responsibility did they have as they come up and take over leadership? How can they be responsible? Or in this case, how can they do it really, really poorly? Remember David's curse, the sword will never leave your house. So we're going to see the sword, the arguments, the fighting, the infighting is going to come into play here. So David has this son. His name is Absolom. Absolom has been staying away for quite some time, and he's finally back. He's finally coming back to Jerusalem, where David is. David is growing older. If you remember, David ends up being king for 40 years. This would be about year 35, 36, something like that. He's older now. And Absolom is a grown man, and clearly Absolom would really love to be king and for David to just get out the way. But David's not dead. He's still David. Everyone loves him. And Absalom is going to come up with this little plan here, this little scheme to try and supplant David. And so we're going to go through a chapter here. And I think most of it's on the front of your bulletin. It's in 2 Samuel chapter 15. And what we're going to see is how Absalom decides to circumvent, to get in the way of, to try and speed along the process of taking over as king. And it's a lot of scripture, so we'll try to get through it as quickly as we can here. It says, in the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses with 50 men to run ahead of him. So he's just got a crew, right, a posse he's got with him. He would get up early, and he would stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. And whenever someone came with a complaint to be placed before the king for a decision, Absalom would call out to him, "What town are you from?" They would answer, "Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there's no representative of the king here to hear you." And Absalom would add, "If only I were appointed judge in the land, then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that they receive justice." Now, you may think this sounds like a nothing story, but this is a big deal. One of the main responsibilities of the king of Israel is to hear people's complaints, basically as a judge. They come before him. You may know the story of Solomon, and two mothers who stay in the same house, stay in the same bed. One of the mothers smothers her baby in the middle of the night. Right? They each had a baby, and one of the babies is dead. And so both the mothers are claiming that the other mother's baby died and my baby's still alive, right? They both want the live baby, and so they come before King Solomon, and Solomon says, "How are we going to figure out whose baby is whose?" They won't agree on it, so he says, "Here's what we'll do: we'll take the baby and we'll just cut it in half, right? And we'll give half to one mother and half to the other mother." And one woman says, "Sounds fine to me," and the other woman says, "No, don't kill the baby." And he says, "Okay, you're the real mother." Right? But this is what they did. If they had an issue with each other, they went to the king, and the king would do this. So if Absalom goes and stands out in front of the city gate, the only way to get into the city, the only way to see David, here's David's son standing out there, and as people come up, he goes, "Hey, what are you doing here?" "Oh, we need to take something before the king." "Oh, he's not there. He's not able to do anything, but I could. You know, if we were just to have me do it, we'd all be in better shape. But unfortunately, he's not there." This is definitely a very bad way to try to exercise authority. It'd be the same thing as if you were working for a company and your boss was going to retire next year and you couldn't wait for that next year to happen. So instead, every day at the water cooler, you go around and you tell everybody what your boss does wrong. Right? "No, you should have seen him last week. You had that email and you didn't send it for a week." And you just talk trash, you talk smack, whatever you want to say, and you just ruin their image in everyone else's eyes. And hopefully that the boss will get fired sooner, or he'll quit, or so you can graduate up into the next thing. It's not the proper way for the younger generation to come into the older generation. A better example in our church would be if I were to say, "We are no longer singing hymns ever again. It Is Well With My Soul is out. We're never singing that song, Old Rugged Cross, out. We don't do it. We only sing songs that have been written within the last 5 years. If it's more than 5 years old, it's out." Right? That's no good. No, we don't destroy something that has perfect value just because it's not what we want. There's got to be a way to transition. How about we sing "It Is Well" and a song that was written in the last 5 years? How about that? Maybe one that was written 10 years ago and 20 years ago, and we get a mix. And that's what we do here, right? We get a little bit of everything as we're worshiping. But to say everything the older generation is doing is bad, everything that I'm doing is good, and everyone should jump on board with me and crucify the other person is just not correct. It's not the way to do it. But Absalom, he's got this little conspiracy here. He's going to stop everybody before they can come in, and he's going to ruin David's image in front of them. Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down before him, Absalom would reach out his hand, take a hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way toward all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and he stole the hearts of the people of Israel. Try to put this in your mind's eye. They come, they want David to judge something. David can't judge it, but I'll judge you. "Okay, thank you so much." And he would always, "No problem, bro. We're awesome. We're friends. Hey, want to be Facebook friends?" Right? And he's like making friends with all these people, making them think that he's he's kissing them, and he's, "Oh man, look how great I am." It's almost like someone running for office. right? They're always kissing the babies and they're doing whatever, and then they get elected and they're like, I don't know, go away from me, find out who they really are once they're elected. Well, he's doing this. He's making himself look like something he's not while degrading the person above him. The wrong way to transition leadership. At the end of 4 years, Absolom does this. That's a long play. That is, I'm starting today, I'm not even going to get anywhere with this for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, Absolom said to the king, who's the king? David, right? So whenever we see the king, from now on we know it's David. So he goes to his dad, and he says, let me go to Hebron and fulfill a vow I made to the Lord. David had lived in Hebron for a little while. It's kind of like, let me go back to my homeland, let me go back to wherever. I need to take care of this vow. He said, while your servant was living in Geshur and Aram, I made this vow, if the Lord takes me back to Jerusalem, I will worship the Lord in Hebron. Not that far away, Hebron isn't. So it's just like, hey, if I ever get to come back to Jerusalem, which he just did, I made a promise I'd go over to Hebron. So the king, David, said to him, go in peace. So he went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent secret messengers throughout the tribes of Israel to say, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpets, then say, Absalom is king of Hebron. Okay, might seem a little weird here, but do you remember David last week writing a message to Joab? Hey, put Uriah at the front and then pull back and let him die. Remember that? And then Joab sends a message to David, hey, you better come over here and take care of this, or I'm going to take the city, I'm going to name it after me. It seems to me that this is like the gossip phone, if you guys know what I'm talking about. This is the sewing circle from the 50s, right? Where the ladies get together and they just talk about everybody else. This is the way we do it. We send secret messages to each other. So secret message here, secret message there. It's like doing an IM and not posting on the Facebook page. You guys don't know what I'm talking about because you guys don't use Facebook. But it's sneaky. It's sneaky is what it is. And what he's doing is he says, hey, Dad, I'm going to go over here for a minute. And David's like, all right, great, go. He goes, okay, now that I'm over here, everybody, here's the plan. We're going to take over the kingdom. I'm going to blow some trumpets, and then everyone's just going to say, Absalom's king. Absalom's king, and David's not king anymore. No, David's going to die, no election, no nothing, we're just going to take it over. Maybe you'd call it a hostile takeover, except no hostility, no fight. We're just going to do it. And if we do it, what are they going to do to stop us? It's kind of like this idea that everyone believes the same lie, and so therefore it just becomes true. Everyone believes the same lie, and it becomes true. There are all sorts of them floating around in this world. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings if I were to tell you something that you believe. I'll go easy. Most of you believe that the sky is blue, right? Someone told you that, and you looked up in the sky and you said, yeah, the sky's blue, right? You guys all believe that the sky is blue. I'd shake it, right? Yes? Except the sky has no color. Because we've shot the earth from space, and there's no blue sky there, is there? You can see right through it. I can see the ground. There's nothing there. What's happening is light is being refracted through our atmosphere. The world is covered in a lot of ocean. There's a reflection of blue there, and then there's just UV light being passed through. Your vision shows you blue, but it's not really blue. But everyone knows that the sky is blue, right? Everyone knows that the sky is blue, but it's not. So there's an easy one that maybe you say it enough times, and it becomes true. So what they're going to do is we're just going to declare that Absalom is king. We're just going to, okay, it's over, Absalom is king, and hope that everyone just believes it. That's his grand plan. It's not a great plan, but it's a plan. And so this is what he's doing. We're going to blow the trumpets, and everyone's just going to say, Absalom is king, and he's in Hebron. Verse 11, 200 men from Jerusalem had accompanied Absalom, so his posse has grown, was 50, now it's 200. They had been invited as guests and went quite innocently, knowing nothing about the matter. So he's kind of tricked these guys into coming. They don't know what he's about to do. Verse 12, while Absalom was offering sacrifices, he also sent for, anyone who wants to try to pronounce that word, Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor. Okay, that's what matters. It's his counselor. To come from Gilo, his hometown. And so the conspiracy gained strength, and Absalom's following kept on increasing. So what's he doing now? He's taking some people over and kind of showing them that he's going to be king. They don't really know what he's doing, but he's manipulating them. And then he gets David's counselor, David's friend, David's advisor, however you want to think about this, gets him to come over and starts whispering terrible things into his ear. You guys know what this is, right? This is just manipulation at its finest. This is us trying to take away the older generation's power or whatever, and instead of having it being given to the younger generation or having the older generation train up the younger generation, instead they're just going to take it and they're going to manipulate and they're going to make everybody look bad. Last time we did this thing, I was about older and younger generation. I gave the example of Big Ben Roethlisberger. Remember Big Ben Roethlisberger? Anybody remember that story? That he's this big quarterback, and every year he says, I'm going to retire, and then he never retires. And so the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted a quarterback, and they said, Ben, are you going to train this quarterback? And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'd rather just take care of me. They've hired me to win Super Bowls. I'm going to go win Super Bowls. He has backed off on that, by the way. He has said he'll try to help them there. So that's the older generation not wanting to help the younger generation. This would be like if the younger quarterback started poisoning Big Ben's food, right? Or put stuff, put icy hot in his sneakers, and just made it so Roethlisberger looked bad all the time, or got sick all the time, or whatever. This thing is driving me nuts. That instead of doing it the right way, being trained up and earning the promotion, instead he'll take it. You guys may remember a story back, this had to be 20 years ago. There was these figure skaters, these girls. And you had Nancy Kerrigan. She was like the all-American princess hero, and she was going to win the gold medal. She was doing great. And then you had kind of this other girl, little blonde girl. She actually was from my hometown. She's from Washington. Her name was Tanya Harding. And Tanya Harding had a boyfriend, Jeff Gillooly, which you just got to know that guy's a gangster, right? Jeff Gillooly. So Tanya Harding's boyfriend, Jeff Gillooly, in between one of the skates, as Nancy Kerrigan is walking off in her skates down the thing, runs up with a lead pipe and just busts her knee. Just hits Kerrigan hard in the knee, takes her out, right? And you may remember that video, why me? She's on the ground saying that. And she didn't get to compete, and that was a real bummer for her. Now, unfortunately for Tanya Harding, it's in the middle of the Olympics is not the best place to try to perform a hit. And so she got caught, and she was thrown out as well. But her idea was, I can't beat Nancy Kerrigan. I'm not going to win if Nancy Kerrigan is playing. So what I'll do is I will take her out of the equation. I will remove her from my way so that I can have what I want. I didn't earn it. I don't deserve it, but I'm going to take it anyway. And we have this feeling that we want to do that all the time. If it's not at work, it's with our grandparents or our parents. If I want to have Christmas at my house for once. We've always had it over here, honey. Yeah, but I want to have it here, right? Or whatever the case may be. We want to take that, which instead of being given it or being trained in it or having a smooth transition of leadership, we want to take it. And if you won't give it to me, then I'll find a way. And this is how Absolom is finding a way to manipulate, to put bad things in people's mouths. Now he's got David's advisor, his counselor. He's got him with him. He's poisoning his mind. This is going to work. Absolom is going to get away with this. He's doing this thing. And David is not doing anything. He's sitting in his temple wondering why no one ever asks him to judge things anymore. Right? It's been 4 years since anyone got through the gate. Yet David just seems totally complacent, totally sitting around like, I don't know, I don't know what's going on. So once again, David failing by not being an assertive king, and Absolom is a crafty individual. That's just those are the facts that matter. Remember when Nathan the prophet came to David, he said, your son's going to die, you're going to be embarrassed in front of everyone, and the sword will never leave your house. Absalom is the sword. Absalom is causing strife in the house of David. And he's experiencing it, and David doesn't even know. He's just sitting at home wondering why no one ever comes to his house anymore. I mean, come on, David, wake up. But here we go. So Absalom's following kept on increasing. More and more people are coming in to this idea that Absalom is going to take over for David. So a messenger came and told David, the hearts of the people of Israel are with Absalom. Really? I mean, he's totally shocked. He has no idea this is taking place. Don't know why. So David said to all his officials who were with him, come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin on us and put the city to the sword. The king's officials answered him, your servants are ready to do whatever our Lord King chooses. Step 2 of this thing. We've got a young person who's trying to make David look bad and trying to do all this other stuff. David has already failed by not being aware of what's going on. But then when he's told, hey, there's a problem, he says, we should go. Why do you have to go? Aren't you the king? You ever met this parent that they have this 13-year-old daughter that's just being terrible, right? She's yelling and screaming and dropping F-bombs on her parents, and you're looking at her and going, why don't you discipline that girl? Oh, I don't want her to not like me. It's easier if I just, she'll get over it. And they don't just take care of business. You're the parent, she's the kid, handle it. Right? But instead it's, oh, I don't want to. That's what David's doing here. He's not being a father, he's not being a leader, he's not being a very good king. He's sitting at home, eating dinner. Someone says, hey, people are starting to side with Absalom. Oh, shoot, we should go. What do you mean you should go? You should go is not the answer. The answer is go find Absalom, make a deal, start training him, try to repair the relationship. David, nope, let's go. We got to go. All right, wuss. So David takes off. The king set out with his entire household following him, but he left 10 concubines to take care of the palace. So that tells you how many wives and concubines and everything David had, that he had 10 extra just to leave there at the palace. Moron. So the king set out with all the people following him, and they halted at the edge of the city. All his men marched past him, along with all the Kerethites and Pelethites, and all the 600 Gittites who had accompanied him from Gath marched before the king. Basically, everyone's just a big, the Red Sea parting and all the Israelites going through, right? Just a big menagerie of people in front of David as they're leading David out, basically. So the king said to Ittai, the Gittite, why are you coming along with us? Go back and stay with King Absolom. Look what he called him. King Absolom. He already gave up. He's calling him king. Go stay with King Absolom. You're a foreigner and an exile from your homeland. You came only yesterday. And today, shall I make you wander about with us when I don't even know where I'm going? Go back, take your people with you. May the Lord show you kindness and faithfulness. David has failed every step of the way. He failed by not knowing what was going on. He failed by running. And now, when people are trying to stay loyal to the king as they should, he's failing again. Go back, just go be with him. Well, when holy people come up against unholy people, when righteous people come up against unrighteous people, the righteousness tends to show up. And so even this foreigner who just showed up yesterday is not going to be told to do something that he doesn't think is right. So he answers, but Ittai replied to the king, as surely as the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, David, wherever the Lord the king may be, whether it means life or death, there will your servant be. Do not send me from your presence. Do not ask me to go and serve the wrong king. Just because you're given up, I'm not given up. That's a hard one to swallow in a leadership transition. Someone's trying to poison the minds about somebody. Someone's trying to mess with Big Ben's thing. Someone's trying to tap Nancy Kerrigan on the leg, and you have to stand up and say, no, I won't allow it. The transition of leadership has to happen the right way, through training, through helping, through comfort, through patience, not through impatience, not through rash behavior, not through anger. That's the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be looking to help those that are coming behind us. What would help them to be here more? We're trying to grow the church. Most unchurched age group in the country, 18 to 25. That's the most unchurched group in the country that do not come to church. Why? Well, because there is no church that they fit in. Or they were raised in the church, they finally turned 18 and they go, Mom and Dad, I'm not going to church this Sunday. Man, I finally get to sleep in on a Sunday. But the fact that they can't fit in, why? Because we're doing it like 60-year-old people. I'm 37, all right, I'll be 38 this year, and a lot of the songs I play are 100 years old. 90-year-olds love my music, right? Because I play their stuff. So why don't we play a little bit of their stuff? Because 90-year-olds are welcome here. 70-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 50-years-olds, 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 12-year-olds are welcome here. Because we will try to give everybody a little something. Everyone should get something where they can connect. You know, almost everybody in the world knows the song Amazing Grace, right? At least on a TV show or a movie, they've heard Amazing Grace. And so we play Amazing Grace quite a bit. But these days, we don't play Amazing Grace the way that we learned it. We play a different version of Amazing Grace. We do My Chains Are Gone. Well, you broke it. You can't add My Chains Are Gone into Amazing Grace. We've always done Amazing Grace this one way. Why are you? Because it's better this way. When more people are involved, more people like it, more people engage with Christ because the song has changed somewhat. These are the responsibilities we bear as people who are in the church today, as we prepare for the church to grow. These are things we need to be thinking and praying about. What are we doing that's drawing people in? And what are we doing that's pushing people away? And don't be surprised if a couple of Absoloms show up and say, you're doing it all wrong, I want you to do it differently. You say, well, okay, let's not argue about it. Let's find a way to do this together. Let's have a transition of leadership. Not a hostile takeover, not Saul hanging on to my old ways until the church just dies, literally dies, because everyone gets so old that they are dead, and no one else ever comes in because you've been holding on to your thing. We used to call it the church of us four and no more. Right? That's what we want. Us four and no more. You got your seat. You sit in your seat every week. God forbid a visitor would come and sit in your chair, Mary. Right? Because then you'd have to come tell them, excuse me, you're in my chair. And I'd say, what? You don't have a chair here. But there were times in churches where if they needed to build something or something, so they'd do a drive. They'd say, we need donations because we need to add a baptismal, let's say. And anyone who gives $100, we'll put a plaque on the side of one of the pews, right? And so you go to this church, and it's like they were selling the whole church off. Everywhere you look, there's a plaque on the speaker, and there's a plaque on the thing, and there's a plaque over here, and they're all somebody's name, right? And then new pastor comes in, and he goes, I don't really like this really old flower stand. Okay? So he takes the flower stand, and he throws it away. And the next week, someone shows up, and they go, where's my flower stand? I made a donation. They put my name on it. I'm sorry. Were you loaning the church money so they could buy a flower stand and then you were just going to let them borrow it? Is that how it worked? No, that's not how it works. So when you want to control, when everything's about me, I want my name on it, I want my plaque, I want my pew, I want my songs, I want my preaching style, I want hymns, and I want them out of the book. I don't care if you have a screen. Give me the book anyway. I want that book. Right? If you think that doesn't happen, you're wrong. It does. People are doing that today. Still, there are better ways to do things, and it's always going to be better if we do it with a proper transition of leadership. And the best definition will be that when we try to do it the wrong way, as David here, go back. You just got here yesterday. Go back. That someone would stand up and say, no, I'm not going back. Because holy is the Lord, and holy will I be. And if the Lord tells me to be here, then this is where I'm going to be. Here is the challenge, and I know we're almost out of time, but here's the challenge that we're going to have. If we're going to embrace that things may have to be a little bit different, lighting might be a little different, or a couple new songs here and there might have to be a little bit different, that means that at some point, at some time along the way, you might get uncomfortable. You might have a whole week where you don't feel like you knew any of the songs. You might have a whole week where you just felt like the pastor wasn't talking to you, or whatever the case may be. And you may have this desire to go shopping because we live in a very consumerist time and country. We shop for everything, including churches. And so if we don't like what's going on in one church, no problem. Take a right, and there's another church right down the road. Maybe they'll give me what I want. No, don't worry, there's more churches. There's more where those came from. And you just shop from church to church to church to church. The question is, when God calls you, as he has called me to this church and in service of him in this church, and he has called you to attend and be a part and serve and plug yourself into this church, even if your neighbor makes you mad, even if you get a little uncomfortable, he's not calling you away from the church. He's calling you to the church so that there can be a proper, smooth transition of leadership. Church is a great place. It'd be the best place in the world if it weren't for all the people in it. So there's going to be times where people are just going to rub us. It doesn't mean we just leave the church, because if you go to a different church, guess what it's got a bunch of in it? People. So you're going to run into the same thing no matter where you go. There's an old saying, if you can't be content with what you have, you'll never be satisfied with what you want. So if you have this idea that church is this place that's here to serve me, just like when I go to the movie theater, I want the assigned seats with the reclining chairs, right? I want the good movies. I don't want to go to the bad movies. I want to go to the good movies because they're here to serve me. Church is the exact opposite. We're here to serve Christ. Amen. We're here to serve the church, to serve each other. And what servants do is they don't think about what I want. They think about what you want. They don't think about how I can take over leadership, how I can have more control in the church, how I, me. They think, what about Jesus? What would he have me do? What about those who are lost and they want to go to church but they can't find a place that lets them fit in? What about them? Think about them. Think about the need. You're saved, right? You're going to heaven. What do you care? Well, Christ called you to care. He says there are people out there. The fields are as white in the world, ready for reaping. And some plant, and some water, and some harvest, but all are called to service. So if we are going to serve, that means daily, minutely, hourly, every half hour, we may have to rededicate ourselves to say, less of me, Lord, and more of you. That the transition would be clear, that you would inspire us to find a new way of doing something, a new cool, whatever it is, the website. 20 years ago, churches didn't have websites. Now, if you don't have a website, no one's coming, So change is going to happen whether you like it or not. Now, as we change, can we do it in the proper way? Can we do it with instruction from the older generation so that we can teach the younger generation? Yeah, cool, videos are great, but maybe don't play videos that are, have swear words in them. Maybe don't do that, because you might alienate some people. Right? Hey, digital stuff is cool, but make sure that it's written by someone who's had some training. Don't just take any old thing that you find on the internet and start sharing it around. Right? That we would be able to teach them these things. And by doing that, the leadership would transition in a much more Christ-like way, as we are called to do. Don't be Absolom trying to throw the old leadership out and circumvent him. And don't be David, apathetic, sitting in your dorm room until you find out there's trouble. And, I'm out. That's lazy. There's a responsibility we have to each other. And I want us as a church to really be focused on trying to accommodate, trying to think about how we can draw people in and not push people out. And that means through God, not through us. He's the one that adds. God increases. We are just the ones doing the work. But he is the one that is going to actually get it done. Trust in him. Have a smooth transition of leadership out of service, gratitude, love, patience, compassion, caring, kindness, joy. And even if you have a bad day, even if someone upsets you, you say, Lord, here I am, send me, I'm here to serve. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we do want to serve. We do want to be obedient to you. That you would be glorified in all we do. That we would not be caught like a thief in the night, like David, just wondering what happened. That we would not be so full of ourselves like Absolom that we would try to tear down others. That through knocking people out of our way that we get what we want. Lord, we don't want what we want what you want. And we just want to be your tools, your hands, your feet, that we would be guided and directed, not through our own personal selfish desires, but through your desires that have become part of our heart. Help us to remember that as we go forward over these next weeks and months, as we know that you are going to send more and more folks into our midst, that we would be ready to receive them, to give them Christ in the best possible way we can. That we are not giving them ourselves, we are giving them Christ. And that leadership, Christ's leadership, Christ's church, would be so clear and so abundant and so bright that we would just not even be able to fit the people in here because they are finding you here. Be with us as we go from this place. We thank you for those that gave their lives. We thank you for our freedom. Help us to remember that freedom did not come free, but instead it was through your sacrifice and through their sacrifices. And so we have a responsibility, a call to serve, that other people may be free as well. We thank you for your presence here this morning. We give you all praise and all glory and all honor, for you are worthy of it all. We pray these things in Jesus' name. And all God's people said,